welcome to another episode of the Iron Sharpens Iron REI podcast. Today we have a very special guest, someone I've had the pleasure of working alongside on a couple of commercial deals, Gladia Castro. Gladia has an impressive background in tech sales, product management, and real estate investing. The host of Get the Bag podcast and the new podcast she just dropped, Invest in Yourself, where they talk about financial literacy, spirituality, relationships, and health, and just being authentic. Yeah, it's very nice to have you here, Gladia.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. It's cool. We're just joking backstage how, Gerald, I've seen you obviously through REI SIF, but like Joe, we've only chatted through the phone, Soldier Boy through the phone, but I haven't seen you in person. So it was cool to put a face to a voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thanks for having me. Excited to be on here.
Absolutely. So, Gladia, do you want to start with just like your story, how you got into real estate, where it all began, and what your motivations and inspirations are?
Yeah, for sure. Shoot, I mean, we talk about entrepreneurship. I feel like I've been in the game like 10 plus years, right? Like the shit ages you. I started off. Thank you. It's the filter for sure. But I started off in I would say late 2020, 2021. So I was working a job. I was in product. COVID was just coming out. And, after COVID, it got you thinking, right? Of like, shit, what I'm going to do? What if like things go wrong? And I need to find ways. Real estate has always been something that intrigued me. I just didn't know how to go about doing it. I had no knowledge. Like my parents grew up, I'm a first generation. Both parents are immigrants. And, I had no financial literacy whatsoever. And so after COVID hit, I started listening to some podcasts. I believe I landed on Max Maxwell, your typical Chris Jefferson. I believe Bigger Pockets, started like really listening in, and then somehow, landed on wholesaling. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. Like, because when you're a starter, when you're just a beginner in real estate, you just think, real estate, you equate that to an agent, right? A real estate agent. And that's all I knew. That's the only knowledge I knew in real estate. So when they mentioned wholesaling, you can get this type of money and there's like no really entry fees, which we know is a lie. Like, you still have to pay up in some ways or put some investments. They sold me on it. I joined Chris Jefferson, who's big in Virginia, Richmond. Shout out to him and his coaching program. And honestly didn't look back, but I didn't really take it seriously because I still had a job, and just navigating that was really difficult for me as well, is the whole like understanding the entrepreneurial route. So fast forward, did a couple deals, and then sort of landed on commercial real estate. Was really captivating for me. Most of my background has been in product or like developing software products as a product manager. So I have a very technical background, and so more sophisticated, I should say. So commercial, like the way you cut the different conversations, is very high level. That was really attractive to me. So partnered up with my guy, Tim. We put together a company called G84 Capital. He's done some commercial deals as well, working with a family office. So it's just natural. I'm very much on the acquisition side. So speaking with sellers, getting those opportunities and leads. And so, we put that together. And so we kind of created a boutique concept. And we were talking about this in the background or in the back stage, Gerald. How do you stand out? And for me, it's like, every wholesaler does the same thing. Like it's one avenue, right? Like, okay, cash offer. Now there's creative, right? Like, okay, I can offer sub 2 or creative finance, but it's like, we'll cultivating relationships as we go, right? As wholesalers with lenders, title reps, escrow, probate attorneys, you name it. So how can we monetize this and like basically build a referral network? So we thought like, okay, any opportunity that comes our way, right? Let's squeeze as much as we can, because selling or buying isn't always the best option, right? So it's like, it's just really digging deep into the conversations you have with the owners of like, okay, it doesn't sound like you want to sell, but you're having an issue with your tenants. Do you need property management? Like just stuff like that. So that's evolving. That still has come through its challenges, but I'll stop there. But that's sort of my evolve. And so kind of going into the invest in yourself, like you're constantly evolving and transforming yourself. So when I started off, I had no idea I would end up where I'm at now, but like everything sort of kind of happens, for a reason. So that's where, I've been really big on the spirituality component. But yeah, I would say that start off with that.
That's
That
awesome.
is awesome. No, building relationships is key, especially going direct to seller. Going the direct to seller route, you're making a friend at the end of the day, right?
Right.
It's rare that there's a one call close, and we all try to strive for the one call close, as glamorous as that looks like. But in reality, it's all about the follow up. It wasn't
Yep.
until I met Joe G that when I got into real estate and I knew, okay, well, the marketing, the sales component, I got to get that down first. There's no real estate without marketing and sales.
Right.
Put that out there first, right? People that do get into it, they come in with money or they come in with the expertise of construction background, property management. Yeah, they got the expertise, so that's their foot in the door. But for me, I have more time, so let's get into wholesaling, which is marketing and sales. When I met Joe, I was doing calls, I was direct to seller, but when he first met me, he was, I had showed him my script and I was just going by the script. Boom, 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 boom. That was my ideation of sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he would listen to some phone calls, some conversations I would have, and he'd be like, "Hey, Gerald, why aren't you digging into that part? Why aren't you asking him about his kids, or why aren't you asking that seller about that certain situation that just came across? Like, you're on the phone with him, have that conversation, build that rapport." Joe had taught me all that. I didn't come from a sales background, so but that was super valuable, right? And so knowing that you're taking that into the commercial space, building that relationship, I had written down here, build relationships, talking to sellers.
Mm-hmm.
Did you dig into that a little bit more and maybe the mindset of what it takes to be in that arena?
Oh man. Yeah, and same. I don't come from a sales background. Like honestly, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would have said I'm not a salesperson. Like I don't do that. And it's funny, I transitioned to a tech sales role that I quit back in January because I wanted to go through the corporation, like working at a corporate company and how they track KPIs and everything. But it's freaking grueling. It's talking about like mindset, like you really you learn a lot about yourself because you're humbled every day, right? Like you go through all the no's. It's so deflating sometimes. People have told me some shit like I can't even say on camera. And you really just have to keep going. And so many people really talk trash about cold calling, but I still think it's one of the best marketing channels for any company, right? Or any industry, because throughout years and years, like it works. Like if you have a process set, it works. But I always try to be very intentional with everything, especially recently with how I approach everything. So before the calls, I really just get in the almost meditative state, like 5 minutes on like, I'm focusing on just solving problems, having quality conversations. I don't even care about the metrics. Like I just give me quality conversations. I want to just be able to help someone out and approaching it that way. Whereas instead of running away from it and being like fearful from it, I like run into that, right? I run towards the uncomfortability because it doesn't get easier. I mean, for some people will say, hey, I've got more comfortable with it. But anytime I have to dial, I'm like, ugh, like I hate cold calling really. But when you're in it, it's like, it makes sense. You're literally solving problems. So digging deep into those conversations with sellers is so key. And when you're starting off, it's all surface level, right? They give you a script. Okay, ask about the property condition. What's the age of the roof? And like, there's no substance behind that. It's very robotic. And so how do you like find your style? Because everyone has their style, right? Like you can take a script, but like, what's your cadence? And human psychology is so key in like understanding what kind of seller you are. You're a red seller or green or blue, right? Like your different color codes. If it's a very type A type, so you have to stroke their ego a little bit, right? So it's just understanding and being flexible with that and not taking things personal. And that's a lot easier said than done for beginners. But for anybody sort of starting out, just keep going. Keep going. It does work. it's the consistency that comes into play that's always difficult, especially on those days where you don't really feel like making those calls, but you have to keep those promises to yourself. So I think coming with the approach that you're here to help, you're here to solve problems, will change the outlook. Nothing will phase you then, right? Even though it's like cold calling isn't so fun. So it's just really digging deep into and being curious, I would say as well, is approaching the curiosity component as if you're in the seller's shoes. It's not about you. So being like active listening, asking really great questions, and you're not going to get it right in the beginning, even in commercial, right? Like I would say I'm pretty good, like really, I know multifamily pretty well. And there's probably areas I can obviously improve on. But if we're talking other asset classes, if that gets presented, there may be some things I miss, some questions I miss. You just have to keep going and, give yourself grace and just asking questions, being curious.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You mentioned running towards the problems, the ones that people usually run away with. I heard a story recently, and I might butcher it a little bit, but it was about an ox, I believe, and a cow. And when the tornadoes come,
I know what you're talking about.
That story, yeah.
Yep.
The cow runs away from the tornado, eventually gets caught up by it, swept away. I think it's the ox, right?
It was an ox or buffalo or something.
Buffalo, yeah, runs straight into the tornado, into the problem, and then finds itself in the eye of the storm and is safe. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned the different seller colors. I've never heard that actually. You want to dive a little deeper into that?
Yeah, like I mean, everyone has their different approach, but if they're like green sellers or ones that are a little bit more analytical, I believe. Jesus, it's been a while since blue, I think are a little bit cool. It's always the ones that are more laid back or more difficult. At least I've found because they have a hard time making the decision, so you have to really guide them in the conversation. Yeah. So red sellers are obviously ones that are like type A. A little bit more difficult. I think yellow is the analytical. So you have to be on your shit. Like when so a lot of when you're talking multifamily, it's a whole different conversation when you're switching from residential, unless you're talking to like a portfolio owner that maybe owns hundreds plus, they know what they're doing. They have systems and teams. When you're switching to commercial, you're not talking like quads or 10 units, like you're talking people that have 100 plus. Then you have to go through gatekeepers, right? That's like people specifically they put in front of them so that you don't get to the right person. So you really have to like learn to navigate and sound like, even though you may not know what you're talking about, you have to sound like, you kind of fake it till you make it. But absolutely. I think that also comes with like the belief in yourself on like, hey, I'm just here to help out. But it's a whole different conversation when you go about that. So the psychology, all that comes into play in like knowing how to navigate the ins and outs of the conversation and sound confident at the same time. That can be quite challenging sometimes.
There is a gem that you just dropped with the multifamily space, because I'm looking to get into it soon. I know that if I go direct to seller, conversations are way more sophisticated, but there is a gatekeeper, typically an assistant, project manager. Maybe some tips and tricks on how to get around that. I know you mentioned nuances, how to navigate it. What could you share about it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. A tip that I've learned is just assume you have an appointment scheduled. So it's like, saying, hey, Gerald, how's it going? Yeah, I connected with so-and-so back in the day. They told me to call them today. I have an appointment at 2 or whatever. Just wanted to discuss some things or discuss their property or whatever it is. And usually it'll throw them off like, wait, they have an appointment. And usually that's enough to them to be like, okay, hold on, let me transfer you to them. That's always worked. But it's like being confident in like how you deliver it. You can't just be like, so it's like, that's where it takes reps. But it's being able to think on the fly is a big one. So just assuming you have an appointment booked. And another thing is just being respectful too, no matter what. So being professional, you're dealing with people that, especially if they're a gatekeeper, they're usually a secretary, project manager, like you said, or a receptionist. So just if you can sweet talk them a little bit on like, hey, what do you do there? oh, great. Yeah. I was just hoping to connect with Joe about this property. He doesn't happen to be available, or, I'm with G84 Capital. We're looking to get through a 1031, whatever it is that works for you. So those are some tips. And there may be other ones too, but those are ones that have worked to like just get me in, or at least get through, get transferred. That's all you want to get to.
You definitely can't use a direct to seller script on a gatekeeper.
No.
I'm calling a gatekeeper and I'm like, hey, I'm looking to see if I could talk to the property owner at this address. And they're like, boop.
Right. Yeah, you have to like have some sophistication. Like, hey, I'm with X company, or I'm a lot of agents, do call, or I'm a broker, or this. But I just say, hey, we're a local boutique. We had an appointment with so and so, and then that's it. Like, just keep it super straightforward.
About your systems, your lead generations, your what marketing channels you're using, and where you're finding success, and what differences are you seeing between your Are you strictly commercial actually?
We do some residential, so that's one thing we've learned, and a lesson is if you do want to transition to commercial, you can't just leave residential behind, especially if that's something that's bringing in consistent income or just opportunities, right? Because although yes, there is some merit in focusing on just one avenue, but you can't kill your bloodline, right? So that's definitely a lesson that we've learned, where we probably took our eyes off a little bit on the residential to like focus on commercial. But in terms of marketing, we cold call using the REI SIF, like first to market method, bulk. Yes, shout out REI SIF. And then we follow that method and we bulk dial through there. So we don't specifically do like straight up bulk dialing, but maybe at some point we will. And then I text too. So I use an AI texting platform where we got a commercial bot built out for us. That is the bot recognizes it's a commercial building. And so we taught it to have, because it's a different conversation with the bot would be having, because we've had it for residential, but it's only limited to so much, right? Like, what if you get in touch with brokers or like those gatekeepers, right? So it's navigating that. So we have a texting marketing channel, and then the only inbound, so the opportunities are referrals. And those are just through the relationships that we built. So obviously working with you guys may come across a commercial opportunity, or brokers that we connected with. So that's something that Tim has really is really big on, is like cultivating relationships. So whether it's with an attorney or lender or broker, those come in. And we found that referrals have been really good. But with referrals, you really have to have a tight system, because not every deal is a deal. So you have to vet the deals that get sent to you, right? And so knowing how to underwrite those, especially in commercial, if we're talking a broker sends you an off market, 50 unit or 20 unit, vetting their pro forma, right? The information that gets sent, that kind of breaks down the projections that they see. We've seen so many times they'll say, yeah, it's a 9 cap, but it's really not. Once you really like do, dig through the numbers. So understanding what that looks like, and that takes time. So if you're kind of doing this like on your own without any kind of guidance, that may take some time. But I would say those are sort of the channels that we're working through right now.
You got real technical, and for the followers that are listening, I know for a fact they're gonna be
pro forma, like what the hell is that?
Yeah, play back to the last minute. And I want to clarify with you, right, G? Single family, first to market, bulk dial, commercial text platform using a bot, inbound referrals, both single family and commercial.
Mostly commercial, but we do get sent residential or single family. So we'll take a look at those, but we found you have to really vet those out, because you can't trust whoever. And one little nugget too that I've learned, although brokers may say it's an off market, they probably have sent it out to a dozen million wholesalers. So it's practically on market. So you have to really vet. The worst thing you can do is dish it off to your buyer, and then they're like, oh, I already saw that deal. And it's like, you just lost your credibility. So credibility is everything, especially in commercial. Like, it's big in residential, but like commercial, it's like, you don't want to look like the idiot.
Yeah, that's rough, because I think I've definitely been there.
Yeah.
on a couple deals, but growing pains, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you're going to run into that one way or another. There was somebody who sent me an off-market luxury deal and here in Miami, like straight luxury in like the heart of downtown Miami, like $260 million deal. And they're saying it's a 9 cap. You mean, and I'm like, it's big numbers, a lot of zeros in that, but like let me vet that out. But it's you always have to vet no matter what, because you have to protect your relationships, you have to protect your credibility, because although real estate is big, each market, like your credibility is everything. And so if you're known as a wholesaler that sends shitty deals or like deals that aren't vetted or whatever, like you're going to be like no one's going to take you seriously. So the higher you climb up, the more you have to have, your stuff together.
Yeah, you know what? That rings so true, because when I first started, I was doing a lot of the bulk dialing, and I wanted to focus on acquisitions mainly. And I always outsourced dispositions, and I've always heard people doing like email blasts, text blast. I never was a fan of that, only because when I would get on wholesaler deals or wholesaler lists, I get a bunch of these crappy deals in the pipeline that were like, man, this is not even a deal. This is in a south side of my local backyard, listed at $400,000 when ARV is truly at like 250. And I'm like,
right.
I definitely didn't want to be that guy. I always believed in the small, handful of VIP buyers that you could just always send off deals to.
Right.
It was always rare that I got something that I just blasted it out. And when we do, it's on investor list now.
Right.
So, that was, I just kind of wanted to confirm that.
Which comes with its own set of issues on investor lift. It's the vetting process just on the other side. And there are so many people who are not transparent with what they're actually doing, if they're actually buyers or if they actually have a buyer. I actually had an agent put up a deal that was sent to them onto their realtor website. And so everyone saw it. The seller ended up seeing it. The seller was like, how the hell did he get in my house? Because there's a video inside the house. It's kind of a long story, but
oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, what's a piece of advice that you could, the viewers, someone who's just getting started, who's trying to get their feet wet in real estate, or something that you wish someone would have told you in the beginning?
Oh man, looking back to my past self, I would say focus on networking right off the bat. Me personally, I would have jumped straight to commercial. I think I felt like I had to, like, I didn't even know that was possible. So it's like I had to go through what I had to go through to like know like the commercial world. But I would have totally just be like, oh, you can wholesale commercial? Like, let me jump through that. I would have probably done, a shortcut into like understanding that, building the network. But focus on relationships. Always, that's what's going to be your bread and butter. And really cultivate them, like build value with the people you're building relationships with. Like, it sounds as corny as it sounds, like, because people can be like, well, duh, but it's like people don't do this enough. Like, they don't really like invest in their relationships or in their network. They just kind of like check in on your people, like follow up with your buyers, like how are they doing? Because these are people at the end of the day. So you showing that you care or like just being genuine is really going to go a long way. And this is a cutthroat like industry. Like, everybody's out for their own. And so in terms of like the spirituality component, I've been really big on like, who do I want to attract? I want to attract people that I enjoy working with. Like, all of us have worked with people we really didn't like. We're like, never want to work with you again. Right. So it's like, I don't want to say avoid, but it's like you want to attract the right people. And that's you becoming that person too. And so that the right people start presenting themselves. So relationships is big. And if you like, don't feel like you have to like do residential and then commercial. Like, if you really want to get in commercial, like go straight to it, learn as much as you can, reach out to people like me or partner up with people like me, especially if you have opportunities, and just figure it out from there until you make enough money and like invest in mentorship. And really it's as simple as that. And I think people overcomplicate it a lot. We've all been there. We've complicated things ourselves. Right. So I think just not overthinking either. Like, just go for it. Decide on what you want, the kind of life you want to live, and and go all in and invest in yourself. And I think that's the big reason why I created my brand for that, because so many people see investing in themselves as like my personal development, right? Or like, I'm invested in this real estate mentorship program, but like there's more to it. Like you have to take care of your body, invest in your health, invest in your like mindset, like your spirituality, whatever it is, right? If you're religious or whatnot, like it's a long game. So you need to take care. You don't want to be 40, 50 broken down, right? But you're like, hey, I'm a multimillionaire, but I feel like shit. My relationships are shit, right? So it's invest in yourself is so much more than just the finance component. It's like invest in your entire like self, your aura, and the rest kind of plays for itself.
I love that. You know what I what I love about podcasts, right? Everything that you just said in the last 2 minutes, like you're putting your message out there, you're putting your brand out there, and gee, I want to dig deeper. You got to get deeper, right? Um, and and before we do that, having to invest in myself, what that means is when, let's say yesterday, I go and join my buddy Trey's masterclass on content creation and day trading intention, right? We're in a book club, and what we're doing is, we're pretty much trying to implement the framework of how to create content more strategically by outreach, impressions, leads, and then monetizing in that framework. And when I'm there, intentionally, I know, okay, this is good for my business. All right, let's go ahead and oversee this whole entire situation from 10,000 feet above.
Right.
I'm learning marketing. I'm learning sales. All right, let's go ahead and take ourselves another 25,000 feet from above. And my whole situation is what I'm doing here is for the impact of my family, my folks around me, for people who follow me, for the brand that I want to convey, right? I want you to dig a little deeper. You mentioned focus on networking, cultivate relationships. Is there a story that you can share that showed any success and why that's so important to you?
Yeah, for sure. And I'll start with a story maybe that when I kind of first started, maybe my second year in, and I was like trying to build momentum. And that's the biggest thing in this business world is like momentum, right? Because once momentum stops, because life is life. Life is going to happen that sometimes slows you down. But I connected with this buyer. This was back when I was living in the Sacramento area, and he was just really awesome. I honestly, it was like at the 12th hour, I was either going to cancel this deal. It was like a vacant lot in somewhere in northern Sacramento. And I just so happened to reach out to him, and he basically flips land in the like Butte County, not even Sacramento, Butte County, like that area. And he was just like, yeah, I like working with you, and like, let's work together. Like, just send me your deals. And this was probably back in 2021. And we closed a good amount of deals. It was like JVing, but he was the buyer. So it was great. I can just send him the deals, and he would tell me what price point he needs to be at. And so I would just negotiate that. And to this day, Gerald, he hits me up saying like, hey, are you still working that area? Because, I've moved around a bit. But it's those relationships. If you add enough value, like people are going to check in on you or like want to continue working with you. So you have to think, is my decision that I'm making now, is that something I'm going to regret later? So how many people have like shortcutted or gypped you guys? I mean, maybe you guys have been part of a deal like that where like, again, you're like, I never want to work with you. And you can only go so far when you're like that. Like those kind of people get weeded out. So how can you continuously add value where you kind of create your own identity of value, or again, just being a good person? And so I would say, just be a good person, like however you want to be treated, however you want to be spoken to, like no matter how people talk to you, like I want to be me at the end of the day. And so if this buyer's still hitting me up, I've even considered, I'm like, dang, maybe I should get back into this market. I know you guys are there too, right? So maybe we can JV on it, but it's those relationships where people keep coming back. So it's like, I don't want to say like the dating aspect where people just keep wanting you back, but in a way it's like you want to create so much momentum or whatnot where people continuously want that.
Ooh, Gladia, she a heartbreaker right here. I could hear it.
No. I may appear like it, but
Hey, great answer. Great story. I
Yeah,
love what you
absolutely.
represent. I love your message. I love the brand. Thanks for coming in. I know you got a hard stop soon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, thank you guys so much for having me. You guys are great. I think like I said, it was nice to like see Joe. Like he is a real person, right? Like I'm like, who am I talking to on the
the
phone?
man, the myth, the legend.
Yes. And I know a deal is coming. And I think we've been big too. Speaking of relationships, of like the people I want to attract. And when, I connected with you and Joe, I was like, yeah, this is exactly, I need more Geralds and Joes in my life to like, that I feel confident. I feel like I can trust you guys, and that's hard in this, like I said, in this industry. So appreciate you guys having me on, and I definitely have to have you on mine to, talk about your guys' story. And, yeah, like I said, I know a deal's coming around the corner.
Absolutely. And the feeling's definitely mutual, I'm sure, for Gerald and for sure for myself. But for those who are viewing, if they want to get in contact with you, Gladia, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm at The Real Gladia on IG, pretty much anywhere, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. You can find me there. I have a podcast, Invest in Yourself, that comes out every week. And yeah, just look me up there. You can always reach out, ask me questions. Always looking to give back, because I was at the beginner at some point, and always respected those that took the time to help me out. So always looking to do the same.
Love that. Right on, guys. This was the Iron Sharpens Iron REI podcast. Very special thanks to Gladia for being here and sharing those gems with us. Yeah, that's it. We're signing out.
All right.
Let's
Thanks,
go.
guys.
All right. All right, guys.